Denver police released body camera video showing a shooting involving officers in Lodo where multiple bystanders were injured. We're taking a closer look at that video.
It's really tough to see what's going on in the heat of the moment.
This just hours before some victims tell their side of the story. The effects of remote learning are still lingering in Colorado schools, the new numbers just released. Plus, a program is filling a need for preschool teachers while bridging a generation gap.
It gives you also the opportunity to occasionally share some wisdom that you've learned.
And you'll have to wait just a little bit longer to see Russell Wilson take the field in a Broncos uniform.
We want to be smart with the guys. It's a 17-game season.
What led up to Denver police shooting at a suspect and towards a crowd in Lodo last month? Well, now we're getting a look at the police body camera video from that night. It answers some questions, but prompts even more. 6 innocent bystanders were hurt in that shooting. It happened back on July 17th, just as the bars were letting out. It started as officers responded to a fight. Then this police body camera video then shows officers confront the suspect, Jordan Waddy. The video shows Waddy grab his gun, throw it away, and put his hands up. That's when police shoot him. Denver police say 7 total shots were fired by their officers. Police have not said anything since they released that body camera video, but we will hear from people who were hurt in that shooting this afternoon. Denver 7's Christian Lopez spoke to their attorney.
We'll be talking to 3 of the 6 victims today, so you'll be able to catch that in our newscast this evening. We also talked to an attorney who has been helping them through all of this, and he told us, and as you can probably imagine, they are still pretty shaken up about the whole thing. They suffered various injuries, including one man who had a bullet lodged in his arm, and we have his x-ray photos to show you. He had to have surgery to get that removed. Another victim also had a bullet go through her arm, and the third was hit in the foot. The attorney we talked to, his name is Chris Whitney. He said after seeing that body camera footage himself, he is surprised that those injuries were not a lot worse.
We saw Denver officers firing live rounds into a crowd. And it's very fortunate. It's actually incredible that only 6 individuals were injured. Because you think about it, firing into a crowd where there's a good 60, 70 people, maybe even more, it's very fortunate no one had died.
We're also hearing from the attorney representing the suspect, Jordan Waddy. He said his perspective is that this was an overreaction and told us that the body camera video shows his client was surrendering. He acknowledges that police have to make split-second decisions in situations like this, but he says the way he sees it at that point, Waddy was not threatening or attempting to hurt anyone.
You see he's obviously thrown the gun. It's gone. It's like out of the frame. His hands are up. To me, that's not a split-second decision. And they didn't just shoot him once. This isn't just split-second decision, one shot. No, they fired on him 6 or 7 times, and they fired into 2 different crowds while they were doing it. It's reckless, it's inexcusable, it's excessive. They need to be held accountable.
This is all just the very beginning of what will likely be a very lengthy investigation into whether or not those officers responded lawfully. The Denver Police Department says those 3 officers who were involved in that shooting, they are on modified duty at the moment. Reporting in Denver this morning, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Now, Denver police officers had to make a decision, a split-second one, about their response to Jordan Waddy. Denver 7 watched the body camera video with Stacy Hervey, a former patrol officer. She's now a professor of criminal justice at Metro State.
I think that's where it can get really tricky when these things are, he threw the gun, because we can watch this video 3 or 4 times versus the officer saying, in real time. Real time is much different.
Hervey says officers feel more pressure to react quickly when they see a potential threat. She says it's because increased violence in downtown Denver and high-profile mass shootings across the U.S. But there's important questions about the shooting that still need to be answered.
What the officers' perceptions were, I would want to know what was going through their mind when they took those shots and what they saw. Also, if it was bullets or ricochets that hit the bystanders, I think that's going to be a really important question too.
Now, Hervey is an advocate for staggered closing of bars downtown to try to avoid large groups of people on the streets late at night. Now, right before those videos were released yesterday, the Denver DA's office announced a grand jury investigation into the shooting. That grand jury will decide whether the DPD officers involved should be charged. Now, a grand jury is made up of 12 people. They will only hear from the prosecutor and not the defense. They could also hear from witnesses. Then they'll discuss whether there's enough evidence to indict anyone of a crime. Now, only 9 of the grand jurors have to agree on whether or not to charge the officers for there to be a decision. If the jury doesn't decide to charge the officers, it's called a no bill, and the officers won't have to go to trial. Keep in mind, the suspect has already been charged. Denver 7 will be following this story all day. We will have updates on Denver 7 Plus for your favorite streaming device. You can watch the full body camera video right now. That's up on thedenverchannel.com. As more and more school districts head back to school in person, we're getting a better idea of how the impacts of the pandemic are really still around. Test scores for Colorado students are still bouncing back from the year plus of remote learning. Denver 7's Veronica Acosta breaks down these new numbers.
I want to point out just how much has changed in the past 2 years. This morning, we saw students walk into a brand new school with their backpacks, maybe a new set of shoes as well. But back in August of 2020, we were seeing and hearing about kids sitting maybe at their kitchen table with that laptop in front of them, using a program many of them had never even heard of before, Zoom, to talk to their classmates and even their teachers. And this morning, we now know how remote learning impacted all of their learning as well as their test scores. So we now know there was more participation in CMAS tests this year compared to last, but we still do have a really long way to go. Overall test scores improved from last year for most grades in math, reading, and arts, but they were way lower than they were back in 2019, and that's across all grades and all subjects. Let's talk about ninth graders specifically. They're of big concern across multiple districts. PSAT test scores showed the percentage of ninth graders who met or exceeded expectations fell almost 9% points than where it was back in 2019. That was the biggest drop across the board. Now, districts and even the state really tried to help learning loss, but we now know those efforts didn't quite pan out like they hoped to. The state, for example, directed the Department of Education to find tools and programs that help reverse learning loss and then keep them in some sort of bank for other districts who would need them. We also know Denver Public Schools poured money into a really aggressive tutoring program to help students with their math and reading. That didn't pan out quite like they wanted to either. We do know DPS is going to be addressing the public about CMAS and those PSAT scores as well. That's expected to happen on Thursday. In Centennial, I'm Veronica Acosta, Denver 7.
The Denver Public School District is struggling to hire employees, so it's holding 3 job fairs tomorrow afternoon. The district is hiring support positions like paraprofessionals, bus drivers, and custodians. The job fairs are from 4:30 to 6:30 at 3 different locations: the Bruce Randolph School, Northeast Bus Terminal, and DPS Training Center. Well, good teachers are absolutely part of the solution to having good schools, and that starts well before elementary school. Denver 7's Nicole Brady looks at a program bridging the generation gap to keep preschools staffed.
It takes a special person to really level with kids.
I'm not afraid to get down on the floor. It's not always the easiest thing to get back up sometimes. But
Mike Van Meter spent decades in the business world. Now he's spending what should be his retirement in a preschool classroom.
I am what they call an encore substitute teacher. I just come in when they need someone to fill in, and it's not a full-time gig, and for a retired person, it's perfect.
I think that as we age, we tend to be sidelined. And we don't deserve to be sidelined.
Lisa Armeo started the Early Childhood Service Corps to meet 2 needs.
So in 30% of the population of Colorado will be over 60. If you have 30% of the people over 60 and we need anywhere from 23 to 32% more early childhood workers, the stats sort of line up to me. It makes sense to me that we put those two together.
And demand for early education teachers will only grow next year when the state starts providing free preschool for 4-year-olds.
It's challenging work. It is physically and mentally and emotionally demanding. Workforce challenges are heavy and constant. And to be able to have a resource to kind of fill in the gaps in that way, and then in so many other ways as well, is it's huge.
Mike went through a semester of coursework through CU Denver and is now qualified to fill in for teachers as a substitute or just help out.
You laugh all the time, I'm sure, but yeah, what keeps you coming back?
It is the pure joy that you get from these kids. Every single time something makes me smile or something gives me joy, that it's just like amazing. And why wouldn't you want that?
Nicole Brady, Denver 7.
Don't expect to see Russell Wilson take the field in the Broncos' second preseason game this Saturday. Our Broncos insider Troy Rank says coach Nate Hackett will rest most starters against Buffalo. Most of them won't see really any playing time until week 1 of the regular season in Seattle.
All the different things that I've seen in the past, there's always that risk reward. And, I think we'd all sit here and say, sure, we want the guys to go out there and do good and get reps and stuff like that. But, in the end, we want to be smart with the guys. It's a 17-game season.
Digging that hat, Coach. Well, here's a look at the Broncos' schedule over the next couple of weeks. Saturday's game, an 11 a.m. local time kickoff from Buffalo. Then the Vikings are in town for the third preseason game a week from Saturday. And the Broncos start the regular season in 26 days on September 12th in Seattle. We'll find out the Denver Nuggets' full season schedule in just a few hours. The NBA is releasing game and national TV schedules for the league at 1. There are reports the Nuggets will play on Christmas Day. And we do know the NBA won't play any games at all on November 8th, which is Election Day, as a way to encourage fans to vote. The season starts on October 18th. Neglected horses are getting care at the Dumb Friends League. Still ahead, they're now able to have a second chance, and it's because of the generosity of our Denver 7 viewers. Plus, construction is forcing DIA to make some changes out at the airport. What you need to know before the next time you fly.